Brian, I have a problem. My wine glass is empty.
Yeah. You're getting cheap wine this time. I'm gonna use bread yeast in it.
Bread yeast?
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm Jerica, and you're watching City Steading. To learn to grow and brew and take control of your food, hit subscribe now. And don't forget to interact by commenting or liking our video and then hitting that bell icon so YouTube will know to notify you when we have something new to share.
Otherwise, they're just gonna go, meh. Anyway, the semi-long-awaited video that many of you have asked for that I mentioned.
I would drum on the table, but our mic will...
Yeah, it'll pick it up and be all weird. Many of you asked for this, and I was kind of surprised because I really didn't think you would. But this is my cheap wine. There's no other way to say it, okay? This is one of the first things I learned how to ferment, and I've made it a little bit better over time. I actually sort of kind of stole this from Pawpaw, if you've ever seen him, but it's not exactly the same. I do it a little bit different, a little bit more updated of a method. I actually get a little bit more alcohol, and I like the way it comes out. So anyway, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have some juice. Now this is Aldi 100% juice. If I read the ingredients, it actually says grape juice from concentrate. It tells me what that is, which is filtered water grape juice concentrate. Citric acid for tartness, ascorbic acid. Now ascorbic acid and citric acid are both natural present in this, in fruits, okay? They're both there basically to keep the color. That's it, because if light hits this, it can discolor, turns brownish or lighter in color. People don't like that, so for sales, they keep it purple. But anyway, that's all that should be in your juice. If it says sorbate or sulfite of any kind, don't use it. Other than that, any juice works. Go with ones that say made with Concord grapes, and it's going to taste just like what we're making here. It actually tastes a little bit like Manischewitz wine, if you've ever had that. Kind of tastes like that. Which I actually happen to like. I like sweet wine. I'm not a big fan of dry wines. So this is my sweet red wine. But anyway, you're going to need some sugar, about 2.5 cups. Okay? You're going to need a glass or one of these. Either way you want to do it is fine. You're going to need some bread yeast. I happen to like Fleischmann's, and I buy it in the big container. If you've seen our videos before, you know I make a lot of bread. You know I do some brewing. You're going to want this. Plus, I like the lid. I don't know, it's just weird. You're going to need some sort of, what? You were about to say something.
He has an unusual fascination with the seal lids for canning. When we have a canning day, I hear a lot of that.
You're also going to need a cup. Now this is for hydrating the yeast, which we're going to do in just a moment. You also will need to sanitize some things, like this. Something I want to mention, these jugs are already sanitary. So the inside is sterile, everything's good. You don't need to clean or pasteurize the juice. It's already a sterile environment, so you're already good there.
If you're new to our channel and new to brewing and you need some more information about sanitization, please watch our video that we've posted for you there.
Right there. So you're also going to need a 1-gallon carboy, which we'll get that out soon. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But first, you want to hydrate your yeast. And I like to do this not because I have to, but mostly because I want to know that my yeast is alive, okay? So I'm going to take a little bit of this, get it open. I like to hydrate in the juice that I'm using. It just, why dilute it? You know, put water in. Water doesn't add flavor. No point. So that way I can do that. Take my yeast, 1 teaspoon. That's all you need. And yes, this really is bread yeast. Yes, you really could make this with champagne yeast if you really wanted to. You could make this with just about any yeast. You know why I use bread yeast? Because it's cheap. Because that's how I started to make it. And because it actually has a lower alcohol tolerance. So it does work a good thing for this recipe. This wine always comes out somewhere between 10 and 11%. As you'll see later, we're going to make it work with the amount of sugars to somewhere in the 13% range. But if it only ferments out to 10 to 11, guess what? That means sugars. Means a sweet wine.
And that is something you want to keep in mind when you choose what yeast you're going to use. Of course, you can use a brewer's yeast for this recipe, but
Belle Saison would be a nice yeast for this. Actually.
Yes, but you want to stick with something that's going to be in the low ABV range. Brian initially mentioned champagne yeast. Champagne yeast in this particular concoction is going to not leave you with a sweet wine. So we definitely don't want to use that for this application.
I need to say something about champagne yeast. Everybody seems to want to use champagne yeast for ciders and wines and meads and this and that. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why. It goes to 18%. Great. You know what? You know what it also does? Nothing else. No flavor, no nice esters, nothing. It just burns through really fast, and that's it. By the way, that's a bottle. That just... Wow.
I'm sorry, it's really noisy.
It's okay. But yeah, that's what champagne yeast does. Does it do the job? Sure, but it doesn't ever leave anything tasting good.
Right.
Okay, so what I did, juice, yeast, mix that up. Now I'm using a cup that has little ridges inside on purpose. It's a self-stirring cup. I love it for this. And I just let that go, make sure it gets hydrated. That's all we're doing. We're adding water to it, letting it bloom, so to speak, okay? So done there. That's the next step. And through the magic of television, bubbles are gone. I just rinsed it out in Star San. So.
Yeah, there's still some residual bubbles. What happened is that I was swirling it really good to make sure that the Star San got covered everywhere. And so that created more bubbles when it made it extra foamy. So we just poured a little bit more of the Star San in there and then gently poured it out, and the majority of the bubbles went away with the Star San.
Okay, so now we're basically ready. If you got the funnel.
Yeah, you're gonna need a dry funnel for the sugar.
Yeah, but first thing I gotta do is this. Because we want to leave some headroom in here, what you want to do is pour off some of your juice. I usually go with about that much. That's maybe like 4 or 5 ounces. And then I start pouring it in. Now, an easy way to mix this up so that you don't have to mix the entire batch, because I've done this in 5-gallon batches before. The people at Aldi looked at us funny when we checked out with 10 of these. It's pretty funny. It's awesome.
We were just at Aldi today and we saw a guy carrying a full case of grapes, and Brian's like,
he's making wine.
that guy's making wine.
You want to use a dry funnel for pouring sugar, because if you don't, it sticks together, cakes up, and ruins your day. Makes it take a lot longer than it needs to. 2.5 cups of plain white sugar. You can use muscovado, you can use brown. It may change the flavor a little bit. I just use basic white sugar. It works. It's how I've always done this one. And I pour it all in. I know it sounds like a lot of sugar. And don't skimp on the sugar. There's a reason. It's scientific. It's science. We have about 1¼ pounds of sugar in the grape juice in total, okay? And I'm using about 1½ pounds of white sugar, giving me 2½ pounds of total sugar in this, right? I need the bung, please. With 2½ pounds of sugar, we know from our other videos and whatnots, and the hydrometer video that I'm going to put right here, that for every pound of sugar per gallon of brew, you get 0.046 or specific gravity, right? We remember that. So that means out of this, 0.046 times 2.5 is 1.115. I figured that out earlier. No, I didn't just do it in my head, but I could have. Anyway, so that means that my original gravity should be 1.115. Now I expect this to go down to, after fermentation, 1.020, which sounds really sweet, and it is, leaving me with about a 12.8% alcohol beverage, right? So if I put more sugar in, it's only going to be sweeter because it's not going to ferment out more alcohol with using this yeast. If I put less in, it'll get drier. Won't change the alcohol, well, it will if you go too much lower.
And this sugar to ABV percentage is a common question that it seems like lots of our viewers are confused about. Adding more sugar or adding more honey or adding more whatever sweetener you're using for whatever particular product you're brewing.
No spitting bunghole today.
Well, only,
had to do it.
Yes. Will only leave as much sweetness as your yeast will not consume.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
In other words, the yeast get full at a certain point. Think of it that way. That's your alcohol tolerance. They can't go past that. It'll actually kill them off. Now, different yeast can go higher. That's why I was saying about champagne yeast. Can go much higher. But it'll just turn this dry. And it'll taste like crap. So, we don't really like to do that. This is supposed to be a sweet wine. We have a friend who absolutely loves this wine. And we're going to do a tasting video with them. And you're going to get to meet them. And she's also, I think Savvy's going to be the taster for the nutrients versus raisins.
She's either going to be the taster or the pourer. We haven't decided.
By the way, I'm shaking this up, but what I'm also doing is introducing oxygen into this must, okay? I could stir it, but stirring doesn't work as well. You shake it, and notice it's only half full. That's a lot of air being forced in there. You want oxygen in this must to start things off.
We've had some people comment on this process saying you're really not getting oxygen in there.
Yes, you are. Absolutely you are.
There's oxygen in there, this much oxygen, and by him...
Some people say that you need to oxygenate more every day, things like that. They might be right. I don't know. I'm not an expert on these things. I just know how I've done it, and I know what I've learned. And you know what? I also kind of balance it this way. I could oxygenate 3 times a day, every day for 5 days. Or I could do it once, put it under my desk. If this comes out that much better, I still had to oxygenate 3 times a day for 5 days. I don't like to do stuff like that. I have a lot going on.
There's also a fine line between when you can add too much oxygen.
Yeah.
Once fermentation starts, you want to leave it alone because the fermentation is going to create a nice blanket.
Get in here.
Sorry. It's going to create a nice blanket of gases.
CO2.
CO2.
Carbon dioxide.
Which is heavier than oxygen, and so it stays next to your fermentation. And this will help keep unwanted things penetrating into your liquid.
The biggest thing that you're trying to avoid is making vinegar.
Yes.
Which is a good thing, but not for this project.
Right.
Acetobacter likes, okay, let me go from the beginning. This is going to be as quick as I can because we're trying to keep our videos, under 4 days. But anyway, so yeast works in the beginning with oxygen to build a colony. Once the colony's built, you'll see them actually fall to the bottom and you'll see all those bubbles come up. That's when they actually start eating. Well, they don't really eat it. They use up the sugar. Eating is kind of a weird thing because they don't actually have mouths, but whatever. And they produce CO2 and alcohol, okay? Now, once alcohol is present, acetobacters, which is like the distant cousin of yeast, sort of, like oxygen and alcohol.
And that's what makes vinegar.
Right. So if you introduce oxygen now, it's great. It builds up your colony of yeast. Everything works awesome. If you allow, once it's already starting to become alcohol, if you then add oxygen, you could activate an acetobacter that could be present in there and turn it to vinegar. We've had several people do this. And they asked and they said, oh, well, what did I do wrong? And I'm like, okay, well, what did you do? And they tell me that they were aerating for 7 days or 9 days or 10 days. Okay, that's way too long. I don't do it after 1 day, and here's why. In our house, when I put this in the spot that it's going to ferment in, within about 3 to 4 hours, I'm going to see activity, meaning my airlock is going to start bubbling already. So in short, you don't want to aerate past the first couple of days. I mean, if you really feel the need, do it for the first few days, but past 2, 3 days max, don't. Mead is different. Mead requires different things than wine. This is a simpler fermentation, works really, really well on its own. Okay, so we have our sugar put in. We have half of our juice put in. And I'm going to put in the other half. Now, it is this wine, when I made a 5-gallon batch, that I got greedy and didn't give it enough headspace. And, well, let's just say that it was an act of fermentation.
Now keep in mind, Brian tends to keep his fermentations either under his desk or in his closet.
We have a small house.
The 5-gallon was in his closet, and as it erupted in a glorious foamy wine mess, it got all over his clothes and his shoes, and it just made for a really bad day.
That's a lot of foam.
That's a lot of foam.
It doesn't usually foam like that.
So imagine this erupting out onto your clothes. So yeah.
Because that's way too
You want to make sure that you have enough headroom. And the reason why we didn't take into account for that when we upped this to the 5 gallon is that we didn't consider that this amount of headroom is enough for 1 gallon, but you're going to need a lot more of that for a 5 gallon due to the ratio of the quantity of yeasts that are making all those bubbles. Right?
Yep. What she said. Okay, so still have some juice left. We're gonna pour this in till it goes to about here. I don't want to overfill this for fear of explosions. Now all that foam that's in there, the bubbles and stuff, it's kind of a pain, but it's one of the effects that you have from doing it this way, okay? I could probably put a little bit more in there. I still have, oh wow, that's still quite a bit, I think. I'm gonna try to put a little bit more in. I still have my yeast going too. Okay, at this point, don't get greedy. Trust me, your shoes will never be the same. But now we have our yeast that's been hydrated. There's a little bit of a foam on top. That's actually CO2 from the yeast starting up just a little bit. I'm gonna pour this in. I wanna stir this around real good. Make sure that it's all homogeneous. And see,
You want to dump the whole thing, or you want to do what you did last time?
But I was watching the foam too.
Yeah. So the reason why I was urging Brian to quickly put the yeast solution into our main solution, which by the way is called pitching the yeast, is that if you go very slowly, the particles of the yeast will stay in your container and not make it into your vessel. So you kind of just want to dump it in there as quickly as possible so the liquid will wash all your yeast into here where they can do their job.
Now, as always, when we make a brew, we're going to take a gravity reading. So many people email me or write me or comment and say, hey Brian, this isn't working right. What did I do wrong? And the first thing I say is, did you take a gravity reading? No. If you don't, I can't really help you. There's so many things that I can tell you if you take a gravity reading that if you don't take one, I can't help with. Notice the turkey baster as opposed to the wine thief. I'm not really sure this is any faster. Okay, throw that in there. Okay, so now that we have that poured in, I'm going to stick the hydrometer in there and I'm going to get a reading. Hopefully it should be somewhere around 1.115. It could vary a little bit. I missed it just a little bit. It's like 1.113. Wah, wah, wah. Oh well. It's fine. It's like, what, maybe a 0.5% alcohol or something. Here, that can go into the sanitizer water. Notice we're putting everything back in the sanitizer as we use it, that kind of thing. That way we're ready to use it again. Now, because I sanitized this tube, because I sanitized my hydrometer, I'm not wasting 250 milliliters of what's going to be wine. That's a third of a bottle, people. It's a lot of wine. Savvy would be sad.
I would be sad.
I don't have to pour it so carefully, though. Except that I'll spill it. Oh, I got it there. I'll top it off a little bit.
Use the funnel.
Nah. I'm a rebel. Okay, so I'm happy. I got a little bit more in there. Just a touch left. Okay, now that that's all done, take our airlock. You could probably see in there, there's two little lines. And see the water? That is sanitizer water. Some people put vodka in there and things like that. I find sanitizer water works just fine. Why waste the vodka? It has better uses. Then make sure your bung is dry. So, got our bung in, got our airlock in, good to go, right? If you think you don't need an airlock, you think you're just going to leave the cap loose, so you're going to put a balloon, don't. It's $2. Amazon sells them by twos. We have links below. They're very, very inexpensive. Reuse them. Some of these are old. I've had them a while. They've made many batches. Balloons, one use, gone. And don't even think of using a condom, because that's just crazy talk.
We're not going to go on and on about that. So just get an airlock.
Yeah, basically. All right, so that's where we're at. This goes somewhere cool and dry. Well, dark.
Dark.
Not dry. It could
Dark.
be can be wet. For about 2 to 3 weeks. Tops. It really doesn't even take very long. This is designed to be drank young or green. This is not an aged wine. We actually find that when it's aged, it changes slightly, and it's just different. We like it young. I think that's all I have. Like, wow, that's it.
Okay, so thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll be enjoying your very own super cheap sweet red wine soon, and we'll see you next time on City Studying.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Hey everybody, if you want to learn to grow and brew and take control of your food, don't forget to hit the subscribe icon down below and hit the little bell next to it. That way you get notified of everything we do.